In early 2023, the European Parliament passed a law that would force companies exporting to the EU to comply with a series of rules and ensure that their products have not led to the degradation of forest biomes. When first announced in the 2021, the EU regulation on deforestation-free products, or EUDR for short, caused some degree of commotion in Brazil, where major export products such as soy and beef have historically been linked to the cutting down of forest biomes across the country, including even in parts of the Amazon. But time has passed and companies have worked to prove their deforestation-free status to continue being able to export to the European Union. But a spanner was thrown in the works this year as the bloc voted to delay the EUDR's implementation for another 12 months. This week's episode features a conversation with Niels Wielaard, head of satellite-powered geodata analytics company Satelligence, and we break down the findings on how compliant Brazil's soy is with the incoming EUDR rules and what the implementation's delay means to importers, exporters, and the environment. I'm Ewan Marshall, Deputy Editor of the Brazilian Report, and this is Explaining Brazil. If you like Explaining Brazil, you should subscribe to our website, The Brazilian Report, which is the journalistic engine behind this podcast. Or you can go the extra mile and make a donation to our newsroom, tipping our journalists via our Buy Me a Coffee page. And you can also subscribe to our Buy Me a Coffee fan page, pledging a monthly contribution to our newsroom in exchange for exclusive content that you won't find anywhere else. Our Buy Me a Coffee subscribers are Andrei Novoseltsev, Wild Rice, Jaciara de Oliveira, Carson Allen, Gabriel Luca, Pan Ludwig, Leslie Seal, Mark Hillary, Louise Renz, Erwan Menais, Aaron Berger, Kars Vrieswick, Alistair Townsend, Miller Renarcido, Peter Abramson, David Dixon, Jose Ozi Stankovic, Emerging Market Muser, Anna Lund, Peter Suffren, Anderson da Silva, and someone who chose to remain anonymous. And our Buy Me a Coffee members come from all over the world, so please, if we're butchering the pronunciation of your name, please send us an email. If you too believe in the importance of independent journalism, and if you want to hear your name on our podcast, go to buymeacoffee.com/Brazilian Report and subscribe to one of our membership levels. Click on buymeacoffee.com/Brazilian Report to find out more. Niels, thanks a lot for joining us. If we could just begin then, because the topic of our conversation today is obviously the EU Deforestation Regulation, or the EUDR, as it is often known. And just if you could just give us a bit of context for our listeners that might not be 100% up to speed on what the regulation says, and maybe what effects we expect it to have on countries like Brazil.
Right. First of all, thanks for having us. Exciting to talk about this subject. EUDR, the EU Deforestation Regulation. Basically, EUDR requires that commodities such as soy, coffee, palm oil, or certain products derived from them that are imported to the European Union have proof, evidence of no deforestation and legal production. So the effect it has is that you need to have this proof. And when it's not there, there's quite some work needed. For example, to know the origin, what kind of farm plot or plantation are these commodities coming from, such as soy, coffee, etc. So that's the effect it has. And I think Brazil is quite well positioned because of a cadastral system in place, which is the CAR system. Recently, there's also been the launch of the Brazilian digital agriculture traceability tool, which is called AgroBrasil Sustainable, the platform. And also for a few decades, Brazil has a very respected forest monitoring system. Although that's not entirely tuned to EUDR specifications. That's also where Satelligence can help. So I would say that the effect it has, even though Brazil is rather well positioned, a lot of activities are ongoing from the government side, but also from the private side. There are specific challenges, especially in getting the proof, but also legality, where you need to have a match between the Forest Code of Brazil and the EUDR specifications.
No, perfect. I think that's really useful actually for just to kind of situate our listeners a little bit there. But I mean, one of the main topics then, if we're bringing the EUDR up to date, is that it looks like it's the implementation of the regulation is about to be delayed. Is that definitely going to happen? Why might that happen? And what are the risks of delaying the implementation of regulation like this, which has been in the making for such a long time now?
You're so right. It's been in the making for a rather long time, but also getting overnight changes in traceability, knowing the origins of the plots, all the trade relations, and getting the proof for the whole world. It's a huge task. So yeah, the discussion on the imminent delay, indeed, there have been votes to delay with 1 year. The problem is that there have also been some requests for changing the law, not just delaying it, and that has caused quite some confusion. I think these delays are or not the delays, the changes are off the table now. But then still, there has to be agreement in the process, and it's not there. But in my opinion, my feeling is that it is likely that the delay will be there. Well, what that means is that why it is happening. It is that quite a lot of producers and producer countries, have said what I just mentioned, that it's not so easy to get all the evidence ready in time. Supply chains can be very complex from the source to the buyer. Also, the European IT system that is needed to upload the proof has not been ready. EU is now working hard to get it fixed, but it wasn't there. And that means that you want to test it out, right? So the more time you have to test it out, the better. And lastly, certain guidance was also not provided. So to be honest, from our position, it's intelligence, having many clients that are getting ready. Quite a lot of our clients are happy. The ones that had not have already full traceability to the origins. But on the other hand, there's also quite a few clients that have invested a lot of money in mapping out all the plots, all the relations, the due diligence, the risk assessment approaches, and the EU IT integration as far as they could. They're not happy. So for us, it's like both ways.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. So, I mean, in that last example that you're talking about clients that would be ready for the implementation as it stands just now, and they've invested all of this time and money and effort, and they're about to see that at the end, they had maybe another year of deadline. Yeah, I think everyone knows that feeling very well.
Yeah, and there's also a financial aspect that some of them had counted on premium price for being fully compliant, which is now not going ahead for a year. So,
and if we're talking about like the impacts of this potential delay for the world, like the climate in general, is there any way that we can like quantify this? If you have a 12-month delay to this sort of regulation with the market the size of the European Union, is there any way that we can kind of put that into numbers or put that into a way that people can understand what does this mean delaying it for 12 months?
Yes. Well, of course, that's also where intelligence is focusing on. Specifically, we're looking into what is the cause of deforestation. Is it related to any of these commodities that we're talking about and that fall under the EUDR? If we talk about soy, coffee, palm oil, or other. That's rather important. The good news for Brazil is that INPE has just reported that Amazon deforestation in Brazil has plunged 31% to the lowest levels in 9 years, I believe. So that's the good news after a peak in deforestation recently in 2021, 22. Also in the Cerrado, it has been dropping. So overall, it's looking good. But if you look into the drivers of deforestation, so the causes, we see that not everywhere the impact of soy is also decreasing. On the contrary, in some areas, deforestation due to soy, driven by soy, is increasing. So with those kind of analysis, we can get an impression of how much more deforestation is happening the coming year that is not covered by the EUDR. However, that said, actually it is covered because the reporting has to be done since December 2020. So it's very well possible that deforestation happening the coming year during the delay, that it is also non-compliant because we're looking back in time. We're looking at any deforestation that is happening after 31 December 2020. So yeah, what it means is companies should not sit back. And fortunately, that is also what many of our prospects and current clients are not doing. They say, yeah, delay, okay, it's in some cases welcome. And most of them are just continuing their preparations, continuing getting the plot data right, the integration with our risk assessment using satellites, the interface with the European system. That's good news. Actually, it's like around 80% of the clients that recently signed up with us are continuing. So that's a positive situation.
Okay, yeah, fantastic. And I mean, something you mentioned there in your answer was, I mean, you mentioned the difference between the Amazon and the Cerrado, which are two huge, really important for Brazil. When we talk about commodities and raw materials like soy, we're more talking about the Cerrado than the Amazon. To be honest, I mean, that's where Brazil's major kind of soy belt is. And a lot of the area in the Cerrado is, while it is kind of wooded forest, it doesn't technically get classified as forest. And so if if my understanding of the regulation is correct, does that mean then that massive part of the Cerrado is not going to be covered by this regulation? And, how much of an effect can it have in that case?
You're absolutely right. This is one of the attention points for EUDR. To be honest, when we were reading the regulation in there, it states that the EU has to take a decision within 2 years whether or not to add other ecosystems. And of course, Cerrado, Chaco, those ecosystems where there's a mix of forest and savanna and other types of land, that is basically put in the EUDR that the decision has to be taken. And that's very important because indeed, as you indicate, actually a majority of the EU's soy and beef imports are sourced from Cerrado. Almost two-thirds, I think, of the EU soy-related deforestation exposure, and more than a third of the beef-related deforestation as well. So it means that the approaches to risk monitoring, management and monitoring for the Amazon area, they equally should apply to the Cerrado and other ecosystems as well. Fortunately, many leading companies, soy clients that we work with, such as Cargill and others, they are, of course, already doing this. They even look at multiple countries covering the monitoring, not only for the moist forest, but also for the more mixed forest, savanna, etc. So it's absolutely necessary. Otherwise, this regulation doesn't make a lot of impact that was foreseen.
Yeah, no, very interesting. And I mean, some of the analysis that you guys have been doing at Satelligence, it's been quite interesting looking at the the data on kind of non-compliant farms and like non-compliant soy in Brazil, because when you look at the data, I mean, the percentage of these places which are non-compliant is really quite small. I think a lot of people would have an image that, oh, there's so much of these places which are, stained by deforestation. But in terms of this forested land, if we're talking about the Amazon and Cerrado, the percentage of these places which is producing non-compliant soy is really quite small. So, but still, even with that small percentage, if you could just maybe go through the data a little bit and explain why this is still such a kind of pressing issue.
For sure. Yeah. You can see it this way. Satelligence offers kind of a Google Earth with track and trace. So it's based on satellite data. And clients of ours, for example, the Mondelez's and PepsiCo's and Unilever's of this world, they often source their commodities for multiple countries. So, of course, this is going far beyond Brazil alone. If we look, for example, at palm oil for cookies, then the oil might come from around 1,500 mills, kind of factories around the world, and dozens of countries, which means that our monitoring system has to cover all those countries. We can do that in the cloud, very powerful cloud computing, getting satellite data every day since the 1980s. But that means that we can see the evolution of the images, tells us something about the deforestation. And as I noted before, also we look into what is causing the deforestation. So with that setup, we have been able to look at the past soy harvest in Brazil for the season 23-24, and zooming into all of Brazil. And what we found was that indeed the land deforested after the EUDR starting date, so the 31st of December 2020, only 1.5 of the total land area dedicated to soy. It's a little over 700,000 hectares, was non-compliant, meaning that the vast majority is compliant. We looked at the number of farms thanks to the cadastral system, the land right system of Brazil. You can do that. It's over 1 million of farms, of farm plots that we assessed. So yeah, even though the amount of land and the number of farms is relatively low, as a producer and as a buyer, you want to be sure that you find these needles in the haystack. And that is why it's important, also because we find an increasing trend of deforestation due to soy. So despite what I just said about overall deforestation in Brazil falling, but deforestation specifically due to soy is increasing in places. But that's why we can be positive about soy from Brazil, but we should also find all these needles in the haystack and report on them clearly. And so that is our goal, together with our clients and producers active in Brazil.
Excellent. And so, I mean, what now then? Because, what are these steps that the industry can take at this potentially late stage of preparing for the EUDR? I mean, with or without a delay, but what are the steps that the industry can take?
Yeah, work on partnering. Collective action is also always good. There is, for example, the RTRS on soy, Roundtable, Responsible Soy, and others, where the industry is already working collectively on addressing traceability and transparency. Specifically, building on that, we are working with our clients to make sure that the plots that they source from are digitized, that requires also engagement between buyers and suppliers. Very important to build trust. Also there we see that not all the producers want to share their plot data, even though it's mandatory by the EUDR. So there we are figuring out ways that we can analyze these plots in an encrypted way to ensure that the sensitivity of this data is taken into account. So that's one. Continue working on the traceability, getting the plot data right, working with us to do the risk assessment, finding out where there is safe supply, right? As I said, like 95% of the soy is compliant. Well, where is it? So if you know, you can safely send that to Europe. And also with increasing or continuing, I should say, continuing deforestation for soy and other crops, figure out, do the ongoing monitoring, not wait until the start date end of next year, but already start monitoring to make sure that you understand your risk. And several clients of ours are doing that. Continuing the work.
Excellent. So, Niels Wielaard, the CEO of Satelligence, thanks very much for joining us this week.
Thanks so much.
If you like Explaining Brazil, please give us a 5-star rating wherever you get your podcasts. Or better yet, subscribe to the Brazilian Report, which is the journalistic engine behind this podcast. We have a subscription-based business model, and your memberships fuel our journalism and keep us going and growing. And our work has been recognised for its quality. We've won several international awards. In April, the Brazilian Report was named the best news website in the Americas for a smaller local newsroom by the World Association of News Publishers, WANIFRA. And also this year, the Brazilian Report won the best story at the 2024 Digiday Media Awards for our expose on the hacking attempt of one of Brazil's Supreme Court justices. And to continue doing this work, we need your support. So please go to Brazilian.report. And this will be the last episode of the Explaining Brazil podcast in 2024. We'll be taking a short end of year break and we'll return in January with more new interviews and episodes. I'm Ewan Marshall. Thanks for listening. Explaining Brazil will be back in 2025.